Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid. We ask of you not very much, other than comment in the comment section, click likes on the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, tell all your friends and family, not just about the channel, but about orangebloods.com in general, because moments ago, just on orangebloods.com, and now here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel, Anwar Richardson with some pre-spring football injury news worth us doing a video over.
Yeah, one of the things I want to kind of get a grasp of, like, okay, who's going to be healthy, who's not going to be healthy, and catching the questions that we've kind of been getting. And, there's two guys that was able to find out that will not be participating. So I'll give you both, and then we'll just choose which ones you want to react to. But Luke Brockermeyer is not going to be participating in spring football at all due to the knee injury that he suffered late last season. Troy Omeire is still recovering from his knee injury that he sustained during training camp. That was 2 years in a row that he's been snake bitten. So that's going to be probably kind of the downer news. Now the positive news will be Jaden Alexis and Malik Murphy. Jaden Alexis had a knee injury that he sustained last season. He will come back, at some point during spring practice. There's no timetable, as you know, but there's always going to be, it's going to test it out and see how it feels. And the big one will be Malik Murphy, who's sustained that foot injury in the state championship game in December. He's expected to be back at some point this spring, So I don't know where you want to start. I don't know if you want to start with the Luke and Troy, or you want to start with I don't know where you want to go, but that's kind of like the news of the evening as we record, or the news of the morning as you may wake up and be seeing this.
Yeah, I think that every one of these guys has an answer or a story to go, not an answer, but a story to go with this news. I think the best piece of news in all of that for me, maybe the only piece of good news in that for me, is that Malik Murphy is only expected to miss some of this spring, but that he'll be able to hopefully come back before the spring is over and have enough time that he legitimately gets something out of being, on campus this spring. I mean, the whole point of enrolling early and not going to senior prom and not enjoying the last semester of your high school senior year is to get this semester head start on everybody else. And, kind of an unfortunate break, no pun intended, in his last high school football game potentially keeps him out for a huge piece of the spring. We had already reported over at orangebloods.com that this injury had taken place and that there were hopes that he would be able to participate by the spring. But that was kind of a best case situation. Mm-hmm. There was a cloud that loomed where he didn't participate this spring. So the idea that, let's say, second half of the spring, he's able to get enough work in that it feels like he got some work in, I think that's really good news for a guy that really needs as many reps as he can get.
Yeah, I mean, when we start talking about this quarterback battle that we're, catching, we did a video about this earlier this week between Hudson Card and Quinn Ewers. Malik Murphy kind of ends up being kind of the forgotten guy in the conversation for a guy that, first of all, was committed longer, than, of course, Quinn was. I mean, Malik, I think he committed in January or February of the previous year. It was very early in the process, not too long after Sarkisian had taken the job. And, he's a guy that still has a lot of upside, Like he becomes the afterthought in the conversation. But when we talk about tools and intangibles and, all the things that he won, and it's a guy that this year really grew and developed as a high school player, to your point. We could see what he was able to do and how he got better. And he went from a guy that was, not playing on the team to a guy that kind of had a team with a losing record, to a guy that led his team to a state championship game. Like that was always my barometer, with Malik, is that I've seen good quarterbacks carry bad teams. And yeah. I've always been with Malik. My big thing has always been like, look, man, I've seen guys they just carry the team on their back. And I hadn't seen that. And then he did a lot of that this past year. And so for him not to, he'll fall behind, but for it not to be, to your point, that blow where he did nothing in the spring. It has no chance.
And just a bunch of mental notes, right?
Yeah. But I think it's good for his psyche too. But you think about mental, to be able to know, like, hey, you will have a chance, in the next few weeks, between now and the spring game, to have a chance to come back. And even for 2 weeks to participate in practice, I think is huge for him.
Yeah, I'll give you a hot take, and we won't linger on this, although maybe it's worthy of its own video for its hot takeness. He's as talented as Arch Manning is. That doesn't mean he's as good as Arch. Doesn't mean that he has the intangibles that may come with being in the Manning family and the football smarts and the football IQ that comes with, Arch Manning's been in a pretty luxurious position to be related to the first family of football. That is just a unique situation. But if you took those two kids out in shorts and T-shirts and a football and went to go play catch, you might walk away from that saying that Maalik Murphy guy I'm more impressed with him than Arch Manning. I say that just to remind everybody, he's an insanely talented kid. It will be really unfortunate if he just never gets a chance because of circumstances, because he's an easy guy to root for. And, Cameron Rising is going to play in the NFL one day. And we're going to look at him and go, never saw him take a game snap at Texas. He was here and gone before you know it. There's a couple of guys that may end up like that from the quarterback position on this roster before it's all said and done. And so I'm really excited for Maalik that this doesn't potentially, or I guess automatically, turn into a lost spring. So fingers crossed that, just because I'm rooting for that guy, fingers crossed he gets out there and gets some reps. On the other side of the coin, I got nothing but really, well, let's go least negative possible. And my least negative thought amongst the other guys is I don't know what to do with Troy O'Meary other than to tell people, don't give up on the kid. Like, he's too talented to give up on. But you and I have been in this business long enough to know that when you get to this point of constantly not being physically available, like we talk about Jordan Whittington sometimes not being able to play 12 games, but he's played games. And we think of Jordan as kind of an injury-prone guy. Fair or not fair, that's part of the thing that he came back for another year. I think he's got to prove that he can do. Troy O'Meary's got to prove that he can just be on the field. And if we get to a point where Troy O'Meary is healthy and can go, I think anything you get from him this season is found money. I think the coaches have to go out of their way to treat him with the kind of training wheels I don't know that they used a year ago. And if that means that Troy O'Meary plays 15 snaps a game or 10 and is a really limited player, but maybe occasionally a highlight producer, that's a huge win. The alarm bells in my head are saying that what has happened with his body is really problematic. And, my spidey senses say, we may be looking at a guy that it just doesn't happen for, despite all the talent in the world. But I say that, and I maintain, can't give up on the guy, but it's going to require patience that I don't know that sports fans typically have. And I don't know that coaches always have it either. Eventually as a coach, you want some payoff for your investment. And it's just unfortunate that guy, that he's not in a position where he can even participate this spring, even in like a red shirt and no pads, but maybe, you know what I mean? Like, even as a minimum level participant, I think I'm sure he'll be out there in rehab, but I wish nothing but the best for Troy O'Meary, but that isn't unexpected, but it is a bit of a kick in the what, that it's as total in its completeness as it is, that he's not in the group with Jaden Alexis and Maalik Murphy as, hey, before the spring is over, these guys may get some work in. it is an ominous cloud.
Yeah, it's disappointing, to say the least, Catch, because he's a guy that, for, the first year that he got here on campus, that guy had the buzz, like the buzz that Xavier Worthy had last year. That's what the buzz was that Troy Omeire had. Like when guys were calling him the next Julio Jones, like
seriously,
they literally were saying this guy's like Julio. Like the previous staff absolutely loved him. And he looked like a guy that was going to start. Catch. He looked like a guy that was going to be in the starting role. He was projecting there, and then the injury happens. He doesn't play. Works his way back from that. And then again, he climbs himself back up that mountain. And again, we started hearing a buzz about him. Like, man, he's making plays, so on and so forth. And then the injury happens again. This is number 2. My fear and concern for Troy Omeire, just as a human being, as a person, and understanding how the business, as you just talked about, you and I have been doing this for a long time. Look, man, you got Xavier Worthy, who's bona fide, legit stud. Check that box. They brought in Isaiah Neyor, who's going to be here. Obviously, he's here for the spring. He's going to have a chance to impress. If he continues to what he's going to do, check that box. Jordan Whittington is a guy, when he's healthy, what are you going to do? You're going to check that box. And Troy could find himself, Catch, to your point, just being a guy that they just hope that gets on the field. But also you understand, like, there's going to be competitions, whether it's the Marcus Washingtons of the world, Brendan Thompson, this fast, receiver that they've got coming in. Like, he's got guys that he's going to have to compete against, Cavante Dixon. Like, you go down the list, my concern for him, and I hope that he just doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Like, he just doesn't become like that guy that's like, okay, good that you're healthy now, but we've got this thing cooking. We've got this thing going already. Because he seems to be a really good young man, and you don't wish anything bad upon him. It's just been unfortunate, and sometimes that availability, if you don't have it, it creeps up on you and works against you. So hoping that he gets healthy and can stay healthy and be ready to go at least for training camp.
If I'm an advisor for Troy Omeire, I tell him, you know what we're doing. This is what I would tell Texas fans too. Hit the reset button on the PlayStation. Check the cartridge, blow on it, put it back in there, and mentally think of Troy Omeire this year as a true freshman. Because the reality is his first year was COVID year. It doesn't count. Last year was his redshirt year. This is a guy that at worst has 4 years of eligibility remaining. And if he weren't able to play this year, he could probably still get a hardship. So we're talking about a guy with a ton of eligibility left. This isn't a guy that only has 2 years left. And this is an immensely talented guy who's just gotten off to the worst possible start that any guy could get. But you know what? Once upon a time, Joel Embiid was like this, right? First couple of years in the league, all you ever hear about is how good he can be, but setback after setback after setback in the NBA. Now you look at him as an MVP candidate, and a lot of that is because you just can't give up on someone that talented. I would tell Troy, if he was sitting in front of me right now, I would go, you just got to retrain your brain a little bit as to like what it is. We're hitting the reset button. You got a bad deal, but he hasn't lost anything. So, go have a conversation with Jordan Shipley, who was the best wide receiver on campus in 2004 when he showed up as a true freshman. He misses all of 2004. He misses all of 2005. He comes back in 2006, and it's kind of baby steps. By 2008 and 2009, year 5 and 6, we're talking about him as the best wide receiver in school history. And there's no reason other than the football and injury gods just won't let up on this kid that he can't eventually come back and have a sensational collegiate career. It's just going to take a lot of patience. Now, final 2 guys. I think it's a death blow for Luke Brockermeyer. I hate to say that. It seems unfair, but that's a guy missing all of the spring with the severity of his injury. we know that they want to already bring somebody in at the position that he plays. I think this is really hard for him in terms of expecting a role on this year's team. I don't know that I have expectations for Luke Brockermeyer to be a major piece of this defense, given all of the circumstances involved. And as far as Jaden Alexis is concerned, I wrote about this in my 10 thoughts from the weekend today on WAR, that by the end of the spring, I think the wide receiver position is going to clear up a little bit in terms of guys in that locker room that know if I'm going to play, I'm going to have to leave. Because you've got a trio of starters, expected starters in Whittington, Xavier Worthy, obviously, and Isaiah Neyor. And then Marcus Washington has carved out a role. I don't know how big of a role, but we know on 3rd and 5, he might be out on the field because he's that important of a blocker. Screens and all of the various little gadget plays. Like, he's going to get reps. You got Brennan Thompson coming in August. So you've got a top 3. You got Marcus Washington and 2 other guys who have to get on the 2 deep before the freshman class arrives. Otherwise, you're only putting yourself into a position where you're falling further and further behind. My concern about Jaden Alexis is he's one of these guys that needs all 15 of these workouts. He needs all 15 of these workouts because this is a spring where he needs to make a move and tell those coaches, yo, I'm going to be a playmaker for you. Don't you give up on me. And that can still happen, but missing chunks of this spring is one hand tied behind his back in this competition when there's work to do, and not being able to play, that can be part of it too. I mean, we just talked about Troy O'Meary. Your availability is as important as anything. And for a guy that I think needs to be one of those guys making a move, just to be in the top 6, I'm not talking about being a starter. I'm talking about don't be the 7th, 8th, or 9th guy at wide receiver coming out of this spring. Mm-hmm. I think Jaden Alexis looks like a guy that probably, unless he comes back and blows people away, he's probably going to be a guy that's in that 7, 8, or 9 spot. And again, now you're talking about a guy that's going to have to be really patient when it comes to foreseeable playing time.
Yeah, so the 2 things I'll, kind of go in your order, like for Luke Brockermeyer, it's definitely just a huge setback, and, he needs probably a sprained, to just, erase some of the things that happened last year and kind of, have a fresh start off of defense. It just wasn't that good. So falling behind on that, knowing that the coaching staff wants to bring in other folks, it definitely doesn't help, his thing. And to your point, also, I think Jaden Alexis is so accurate. The one thing that when they got here, and I say they, I mean Sarkisian and the coaching staff, they looked at the number of scholarship wide receivers and were like, this is too many. We don't need this many guys. And it was in double digits, right, Catch? Wasn't it somewhere around like –
It was like at 15 or 16.
Yeah, it was – I was going to say 15. So, yeah, it was right in there. And they're like, look, that's too many people. And they definitely wanted to dwindle that number down. And that number has dwindled. But to your point, like they're going to get to – the one thing about Sarkisian is he's going to run his certain amount of guys – and that's it. Like you remember when Tom was here, there were games where like 8 guys caught passes. I mean, just everybody gets catch like Oprah. Like you get a pass, you get a pass, you get a pass, you get a pass. And sorry,
it was rotation city.
Oh, it was definitely rotation city. Like they were rotating their asses off. And it kind of, this has changed under Sark. Sark goes with like who his top guys are. And he goes, you just got to beat those guys. I'm not pulling Xavier Worthy just to pull him. Yeah. He's our best guy.
Isaiah Worthy's, it's not Xavier Worthy is a guy that will tell the coach, no, I'm not coming off the field. Like, what are you talking about? Do you know who I am?
So that's the problem with Jaden that he faces, which is when you start developing the pecking order, you have a new wide receivers coach and Brendan Marion who, he's going to work with the guys and get to know the guys that he knows and get that. All right, this is his first spring here. He's going to say, all right, I got these guys here. These are my guys who I know are reliable, dependable. Then I'll you'll be at the back of the line and you'll have to work your way back in the summertime and in training camp. So, he will definitely have some catch up to do. Really both, Troy and of course Jaden, but at least Jaden has a little bit of a chance to play. But he's to your point. There's got to be a goal for him, which is to crack. What do you say? Like that top 5-ish, 6-ish, somewhere in there. He's got to be in that conversation, or else he's got decisions to make after the spring.
We're counting down the hours until spring football begins. Less than, I don't know, by the time you watch this video, spring football may just be starting. We're hours away. It's Monday night. Hey, do us a solid. If you learned anything in this video, give us a like. Hit that like button. It helps our algorithms. I can't explain it, but boy, they tell us it helps. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments in the comments section about any of the things that we've talked about. And know this, wall-to-wall coverage all week long in this first week of Texas spring football in the 2022 season. We've been thirsty for some practice. By the end of practice, we'll be ready for it to be over.
Yeah.
But for now, it sounds really good to have some actual football to check out on some level. So stick with us tomorrow. Like that channel. Do all that stuff. You heard me earlier. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. You guys be good. Later.